I want to have a discussion about the social responsibility that men have to be emotionally vulnerable and how it'll help them succeed in their professional lives. And before you snicker at such an assertion, I want you to consider, what if we can make it fun? I'll let you ponder that question for just a moment as I bring you some statistical evidence as to why this is vitally important. According to my friends over at Zurich Insurance Group, in order to maintain a feeling and appearance of manliness, the research shows that 38% of all men are hesitant to talk about their feelings and emotions. Furthermore, 3 out of 10 of all men have never cried or shown emotion in front of others. Ege Reynolds grew up in Turkey, and over the last 8 years, he's gone through a transformational and life-changing journey, and this remarkable businessman has a story he wants to share. Over the last 8 years, he's overcome social and emotional anxiety, a bout with binge eating and an eating disorder, and a weight loss journey that's seen him lose over 65 pounds from the height of his heaviest weight of 225 pounds. And now he's developed the social and emotional confidence necessary to build meaningful relationships, run a six-figure business, and relax into a state of love and presence when talking to friends and family members. Today, Reynolds is the founder and CEO of Data-Driven Actualization, where he uses data-driven gamification tools to make transformation fun, easy, and sustainable for scientifically driven men. He joined me this week because he was eager to have a conversation about how to become a more balanced man, step into your higher self, optimize your mental health, and foster authentic and meaningful relationships. His approach relies on Buddhist principles and social science, and Reynolds joined me this week to dive into the details of how his philosophy can help men maximize their physical, emotional, and mental presence in every aspect of their lives. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Reynolds began his remarks by diving into his 8-year transformational journey and how he's evolved.
Yeah, I mean, to start with, my name is Ege, which is a Turkish name. I grew up in Turkey, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to visit, but food in Turkey is absolutely delicious. So growing up, I ate a lot of food, played a lot of video games, and although I was very good in school, like math and science, I was quite overweight and I had a lot of trouble just socializing and meeting people. So when I was around 17 years old, I remember coming back from this trip. I went to Europe with my parents or with my family. And when I came back and I stepped on the scale, I just saw like 225 pounds, which is around 100 kilograms or so. And I remember just having this thought of like, okay, something needs to change because this is not where I want to be going. So throughout that summer, I was able to lose, around 30 pounds or so. And then throughout the year, I lost 65 pounds, retransformed my body. And what I learned from that experience was that, we can always make a difference in our lives. And that was my first inspiration to really step into courage and face my fears, both socially and just in life, because I realized I didn't have to be a victim to the circumstances that I had, but I could just take the right actions, put the right steps, and then through that, just evolve my understanding of the world, of people. And that led to, overcoming my social fears, building a more peaceful inner world. But that weight loss was kind of the start of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also curious to ask you about a male vulnerability because I think it's important for men to also be in touch or connected to their feelings. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're in a strange point in society where a lot of men are open to that, and then there's a lot of men who's a bit scared of that, who still believe like, oh, showing feelings could be perceived as a weakness. But I think, within the next few years, it's going to be more and more encouraged and accepted for men to be more open and vulnerable while still remaining in their strength. Because I think showing emotion is a strength in itself. Because when we express ourselves fully, that involves expressing when we're sad, when we're frustrated, when we're having self doubt. And I think that's what creates a feeling of intimacy, whether, you're spending time with friends or you're with a romantic partner. So I agree with you. I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know, my friend, that you're a former software engineer and the founder and CEO of a data-driven actualization company where you use gamification as a tool to make transformation fun, easy, and enjoyable for men, my friend. So tell me about the mission and why it's so important to you, my friend.
Yeah, the mission's very simple. I think we're at an intersection in in the phase of the world where we have access to a lot of technology tools to have scale, and we have access to data, and we have a lot of systems around gamification to make things fun. So if we're to break down the name, data driven is basically using the data to guide people's growth. So we kind of combine the art of coaching with the science and the tangibility of people seeing, here are the ways in which I'm making progress. Because I think a lot of the time, if you're working with a coach or even a therapist, sometimes people process all their emotions or talk about stuff and they feel like they're getting better, but they don't have the evidence tangibly to support it. So what we're doing is to use the data so people can track their own progress. Just like if you went to the gym, you probably tracked like how much you lift on one session and try to improve that over time. Or when I was losing weight, I was tracking how much weight I lost. We can track the same things with actions that are important to us and our mood, and we make the process fun by gamifying it. So the way that we work with it is like, as people hit certain milestones, they can unlock different modules and get extra support and get extra calls, so that there's a surprise element to the guidance and the coaching. Just like in a video game, if you defeated one of those big bosses, maybe you're rewarded with some coins or extra accessories and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ege, do you think your model helps men to stay disciplined and accountable if they're rewarded if they stay committed to a process, aren't they?
Yeah, I think, whenever we have fun with something, it becomes a lot easier to do it. If you enjoy playing basketball or you enjoy a TV series, there isn't as much motivation needed to stick to that process. And I think what our system allows people to do is to actually enjoy the process of them stepping into courage because they know, oh, if I, do this workout this week, I'm going to get this bonus module. Or if I do my meditation and I'm consistent with it, I might get a new meditation. So it keeps people excited and uses, some of the dopamine systems people have on social media apps to keep people coming back. We're using that in a more productive way where them doing what they need to do becomes eventually what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, I know you've coached men from companies such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Blizzard, my friend, and you've helped
Mm-hmm.
them sort of transform using four pillars, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can go through those pillars and the significance of each one, my friend.
Of course, Kevin. Yeah. So there's four pillars we work with. The first pillar is relaxation. So relaxation comes down to how can you step into any environment and stay grounded, stay present, because a lot of the problems people face is through the narratives and stories in their own mind. So he helped them relax in the mind by, using certain meditation techniques, but we also help them relax in the body because these two parts are connected. The second principle is expression, and that comes down to, even what you mentioned about being more vulnerable. I think the core of expression is owning your internal world without trying to manage other people's expectations or exaggerating what's going on. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is empathy. Once you get to feel more relaxed and you're able to express your internal world more clearly, the next part becomes how do we communicate in a way and show up in a way where we show more empathy and care for people. And the last part is leadership, because it's through leadership that we can communicate with others in an efficient way, but also build our own social networks, social tribe, build friendships, build intimacy with people that we care about. So when we combine these four principles, we have a very holistic system in terms of how to navigate life. And the way we look at these principles is almost like a compass, right? Because what relaxation may look like for you would be different than how it would look like for me. And this is what allows the guys that we work with to eventually create their own expression of these principles.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ega, I'm curious, how do you think both gamification and the art of science and how we've used science to explore the ways that we can enhance life forward? How do you think the combination of both gamification and science can help men live fulfilling lives from a broad perspective? What are your thoughts there?
Hmm. I think gamification is super powerful to make anything more playful and fun. So, for example, everybody knows, okay, I want to improve my health, I want to improve my finances, I want to improve my relationships. And if we can make our actions more gamified, such as, oh, when I do 4 workouts this week, then maybe I'm going to go and, get myself my favorite snack, even a simple example like that, because we're incorporating more celebration and surprise into the process on a 5-10 year time horizon, that will be more sustainable. And I think understanding the science is extremely important for people who want to transform, because through the science we can see like how can we put ourselves in states of more neuroplasticity where we create the optimal environment for not just learning intellectually but also changing our outside behavior. Because a lot of the time I think people struggle because they have a problem, but they also struggle because they lack understanding around the problem. So the science gives the understanding, and then the gamification makes it easier for us to change that behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to have a conversation about the importance of balance and how we
Mm.
help men sort of increase their self-esteem and live in a more authentic or foster a more authentic relationship with building relationships, because authenticity is the key to both success, balance, and understanding, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what about balance? Do you have a question around here?
In terms of building relationships and surrounding yourself with the appropriate people and really
Mm.
diving into the importance of connection and learning and gaining knowledge. What are your thoughts on the importance of building relationships?
Yeah, I think building relationships with people you care about who also care about you is one of the most meaningful things we can do in life. And there's been a lot of research around the quality of your relationships being one of the primary factors to your levels of happiness. And I think the reason for that is, right, like we can make all the money in the world, we can get into the best shape that we want, but if we don't feel accepted, appreciated, celebrated by the people around us, then life is going to feel very black and white. Like it's still going to be functional, but I think what relationships allow people to feel is almost like seeing color in life, and that's extremely meaningful. So I think for anyone to live a balanced life, making time to prioritize relationship, to prioritize going out there and connecting with people with similar values and interests is very important.
Yeah, and I know that you're also a big believer in Buddhist principles and how it
Mhm.
relates to social sciences. So I'm wondering if you can connect the dots to tell me how those two things are interconnected and their importance as well.
Yeah, I think what Buddhist principles allow you to do is understand the whole social realm of connecting with people more from the lens of how impermanent everything is. Like, for example, fear holds a lot of people back in starting new conversations with strangers, maybe. And if we can take a Buddhist lens into that fear, we can go, well, this fear is impermanent. If you just sit with it for a while, eventually the fear subsides. So whatever state we're in, it's always subject to change. And at the same time, this fear sometimes comes up very randomly. So it's very impersonal. We're not in control of it. So I think the Buddhist perspective allows us to almost accept this lack of control we have around life. And in a paradoxical way, accepting that gives us more control, because now we're not trying to change the outside world to do what we want to do, but we accept the outside world as it is, and then we give ourselves the power to move accordingly without letting the outside world kind of impose the world state on us.
Yeah, and Edgar, I know that you're someone that believes very strongly in the spirit of sharing. So, in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, my friend, I wanted to sort of have an open dialogue about what it really
Yeah, of
means
course.
to be a balanced man. And for me, life is all about what I call building social capital. So, Edgar, I don't know how much research you did on myself, but I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that
Mhm.
I don't have enough oxygen to walk normally, and I actually found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk without assistance because of the severity of my condition for the rest of my life. But I
Mhm.
firmly believe that life is an opportunity to leave an impact. And one of the ways I do that is by having these conversations because I believe in building the social experience of capital and having conversations with a diverse group of people. So I'm wondering
Mhm.
your thoughts on how our socialization and social responsibility as a people can help us live a more balanced life. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think first of all, what you shared is super powerful in the sense that we can go through any experience of life and we can make that a reason to inspire more people or even inspire ourselves rather than making that a reason to give up or accept defeat. And I think that's what you've done really well in terms of having an experience, realizing, okay, this is where my life is, but using that as a motivation. And the way that relates to social connection, I think, is when we connect with each other, especially with people with different backgrounds, we start considering perspectives that we may not have experienced directly in our own life. So the more diversely we speak with people, like, people from different cultures, people from different countries, people with different upbringings, the the more holistic our understanding of the world becomes, so that when we make decisions about how we want to live a peaceful life or how we want to live a more authentic life, then we can consider higher and more perspectives. And I think that's where socializing really helps someone's growth. Like, even if you read all the books, you watch all the videos, you listen to all the podcasts, if you don't speak to people, you're not really going to know what's happening in the world. And I think social connection helps us connect, but also learn from each other so we can grow as a collective.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're having this conversation on the week of National Accessibility Week, my friend, and as
Amazing.
as we celebrate the power of individuals like with disabilities, such as myself, I'm curious. What's your definition of a fully inclusive society? And as you know, when we talk about inclusion in the workplace, my friend, as a business owner and entrepreneur, I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of celebrating inclusion of folks with disabilities and giving them a space to excel in the workforce. What's your thoughts there as well?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important to have more inclusion in the workspace. My company is not big enough where I'm hiring other people to do work, so I can't speak to it firsthand. But what I've seen is this comes back to your question around different perspectives and different life experiences, is the more inclusion we can have, an opportunity we can have for different groups of people, I think the higher that develops the perspective of the company. And also at the same time, when we can give these opportunities to people, that also allows them to connect to society, to their community, and to their environment, which is extremely powerful for a meaningful life. Like, I don't think anyone should be excluded from certain aspects of their life because there is a disability. And I think we should do, or we can do, everything in our power to make sure that we're working with people on providing those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I also wanted to dive into the subject of masculinity as a whole because, we talked about vulnerability earlier, but I also wanted to apply into the word masculinity and also telling men that they don't always have to be the most strong in terms of emotional or character support, but it's important for them to be humanized and authentic as well, isn't it? So I'm
Yeah.
wondering your thoughts on the term masculinity as it relates to vulnerability as well. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume masculine and feminine mean male and female, and that's not really the case. Like masculine and feminine are energies and polarities within the universe. So a man can have a masculine energy and a feminine energy. And it's not a binary thing of, oh, this is a masculine man, this is a feminine man. It's like what percentage of you are embodying the masculine and what percentage of you are embodying the feminine. And I think a man who's very authentic and confident and playful and, has leveled up to his higher self actually integrates his masculine and feminine because the feminine is the part of us that likes to be playful and have fun and really be spontaneous and enjoy life, whereas the masculine is more the watcher who can see the world just go by, and without identifying with what's happening he can hold this perspective of, okay, very equanimous, very grounded, this is just how life is. So when it comes to authenticity, I think when a man can integrate both his masculine and his feminine, that's when his full expression comes to surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what it means to you to live a meaningful and productive life and how Buddhist principles can help us do that on a larger or broader scale. What are your thoughts there?
Hmm. The simplest way to live a meaningful life, I would say, is to minimize regret. Because if we look at studies that were done on people, like one of the biggest things that people talk about when they're about to die is, I wish I lived a life true to myself and not a life that was imposed on me by others. So I think a meaningful life comes from minimizing your regret in the future. And whenever you're making a decision about what you want to do in your life right now, asking yourself, if I were to speak to the 80, 90-year-old version of me, which decision would I regret not making? And I think what the Buddhist principles allow us to do as we're asking these questions is to recognize whatever emotions we may be feeling at the moment, whether it's fear, doubt, anxiety, frustration. These things will all pass away because usually all of us know how to live a more peaceful or meaningful life, but we're just afraid to take that step. And bringing in that Buddhist perspective can make that transition a little bit easier.
Yeah, and Edgar, I want to talk to you about resilience and they really how it relates to prosperity. I'll give you an example by using myself as an example. So, when I graduated college, I graduated with a journalism degree.
Mm-hmm.
And when I graduated college, I was rejected by 10 news directors who told me at the time I had a lot of energy and an enthusiasm for the field of journalism, but because of my disability, they viewed me at the time as a liability, and it took me 6.5 years after I graduated college to get my first paying job. So I made a vow to myself when I started in the field of inclusive employment that I would do everything that I could to break down barriers to access to employment for all groups, whether they're marginalized or not. So I'm wondering um, your thoughts on resilience because for me, I now get paid to tell people about my story and how I overcame adversity. And I always tell people that adversity is a strength because if you overcome adversity, resilience is the answer to the test once adversity strikes. So I'm wondering your thoughts on resilience and why it's so important to have that as a principle in our lives.
Mm, that's a beautiful question. And I mean, congratulations to you for really showing that resilience for 6.5 years and getting that first job. I think it's so easy for people to lose hope. And that's where resilience comes in. And that's what's so, I think, touching and inspiring about your story is just your own life is an example of resilience. And I think that's why you got to the point that you are today. So the way I look at this for anyone who wants to build more resilience is the life that you live when you're resilient is different. And it's that old quote of like, hard times right now lead to easy times later. But if you pick the path of the most comfort now, then that will create discomfort later in your life. So whenever there is discomfort in my life or I'm facing a certain challenge, the way I look at it is like, okay, this is the time in my life where I really get to build resilience. I see it more as a gift of life is challenging right now, but let me learn the lessons from this gift. So I'm building my resilience so that the version of me who's 5, 10, 20 years down the line is a lot more capable and skilled in working with life compared to who I am today. And that would be the perspective I recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often hear the term anger becoming the best versions of ourselves, both inside and out. And one of the ways I think you do that is by really challenging yourself to think beyond your comfort zone. So, what do you think it means to become the best version of ourselves and really think beyond our comfort zone? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there's 3 daily questions that anyone can use to see how they're moving towards that. I think when it comes to being our best version, first, we celebrate our wins. So at the end of every day, I ask myself, what was my biggest win for the day? Like, what was the thing in my life that was really cool that I want to celebrate? Because celebration creates consistency. The second question I ask is, what's the biggest lesson I took from today? Because if I can reflect on my lessons, I know, okay, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm improving my life. And the third one, and this really comes down to becoming the best you, I ask myself, what was the boldest thing I did today? What was a moment where I could have chosen fear, but instead I chose courage? And I think asking myself those 3 questions every single day, I know that I'm living through the best version of myself because I'm celebrating, I'm learning, and I'm stepping into courage. And for anyone who wants that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and Aga, just talking to you, I know that self development and self reflection is important, and I firmly believe that self development is an ongoing process because we can all learn, grow, and share together. And I always tell people, don't limit yourself because your diversity of thought is something that we can all collectively learn from. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the process of self development and really having that self confidence and belief in yourself because diversity is really a strength, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think just like you said, Kevin, it's about recognizing that we all have a gift to share with the world, and the way I develop can be different than the way you developed. Like the best version of Kevin may have a different expression than the best version of Ege. And I think that's when, like, when we recognize that, that's when we can stop comparing ourselves to others and only compare ourselves to us, but also do it in a loving way, where instead of paying attention to areas where we feel like we may be falling short, instead of looking at that as flaws, we can look at it more as things that make us unique. And if it's something we can change, things or areas that we can build resilience in. Because what makes people relatable is not necessarily their accomplishments, but it's their humanness, like times that they struggled in their life, or maybe like a something that people would consider weird or strange. Because I think that's how we recognize, oh, we're all human and we all have imperfections. So actually, those imperfections is what brings us closer.
Yeah, absolutely. No one's perfect, and we can all, we can all learn. I always say, the day that you stop learning is the day you die, because you can always learn something new from somebody else, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And from your own experiences too. So I'm
Mm.
curious to ask you as we end our conversation today all about the importance of leaving what I call a meaningful impact. Life is such a fragile nature, Edgar, and I'm
Mm.
always committed to doing everything I can to maximize the value that I hold while I'm here on Earth. The last line of my biography says that the tragedy of life isn't when it ends, it's refusing to live while you still have air to breathe, my friend. So I'm going to
Yeah.
end by asking you, what do you think it means to leave a meaningful impact? And how do you want your own personal and professional legacy to be defined?
Yeah, I think the only way to live once we die is through the impact we make on others. And that's what drew me to coaching to begin with, was to really help people change their own lives, because I saw the difference on the quality of my life, quality of my emotions and thoughts when I was 225 pounds, afraid to speak to people, couldn't really motivate myself to do anything outside of playing video games, to now having more focus, having lost the weight, having friends I care about who care about me, and the quality of life is completely different. So if I can share some of that with the people I coach, with the people I help, or in conversations like this, and someone takes maybe one sentence or a few words that really resonate with them, and that helps them change their life, I think that has a massive butterfly effect. And that's what I care about the most, is through my transformation, opening people's eyes to their potential so that the world can be a better place collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edgar, finally tell me, if people want to get connected with you, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, the best way to connect if you enjoy this conversation is to go on Instagram and search Data-Driven Actualization. And you can just send me a message there saying you're coming from this podcast with Kevin. And, any questions you have or anything you're curious about, I'm happy to guide you in the right direction.
Well, Edgar, I appreciate you being here today and sharing your experience in business life and vulnerability, my friend. I think
Thank you.
having more conversations about men's mental health is important, and if we can make it a little bit more fun, that's important as well. So I want to thank you for
Yeah.
engaging in conversation and for being here today. It's most appreciated.
Thank you for having me on, Kevin, and sharing your own stories as well. It was incredible being here with you.